One of my favorite things to do is actually to comb through Reddit, particularly the tressless forum that is on there, and read through what people are talking about in the hair loss and hair growth community. A lot of it just comes down to finasteride and minoxidil results, which is probably the most bang for your buck treatment that we have available today when it comes to stopping hair loss and regrowing new hair. But there's also just a lot of debate that goes on this platform and in this forum around new treatments, weird problems that people are having, new research that's coming out, etc. And I stumbled on this interesting article that I figured I would read for you today because I just found it extremely interesting. And it starts off with saying, I cannot believe that a cure has not been established yet. And I think that that is really, really telling because like hair loss isn't just as simple as we make it out to be when it comes to it's purely a cosmetic issue of just growing hair on your scalp. Now, obviously, we know that it's androgen related and DHT related, and that when you lower DHT all throughout your body and testosterone, you definitely see a lot of new hair growth in men. And the biggest study of this is going to be men transitioning to women and all the finasteride and dutasteride users around the world that usually see pretty significant hair growth. But this is a man that just kind of wanted to rant that said, I cannot believe it has taken this long to find a real and lasting treatment / cure for balding. He said, I'm dating himself, but I remember listening to the radio back in 1992. So this is over 30 years ago. He was 16 at the time, talking to the radio host, was talking about how the FDA just approved Rogaine for the first use by women, and science was 5 years away from eliminating baldness altogether back in 1992. And then he said, I remember thinking, awesome, I'll never have to worry about that. Here I am, some 34 years later, bald as a baby, and it still bothers me and pisses me off as much as the first day I noticed that I had a problem. I just know I'm going to be on my deathbed, fading in and out of consciousness, and the TV in the background and the news anchor will come out and say, they cracked the code. Science has finally figured out how to stop baldness. Right then and there, I will flatline, never knowing again what it is like to have a full head of hair as I did listening to the radio at 16 years old. And then there's just a lot of comments that said like, I'm in my 60s bald and every so often I dream of having my hair back. So I hear you. Why not? Very few diseases have cures, even if the best treatments for illness like most cancers, HIV, AIDS, and other diseases just have treatments. Hair loss meds are like everything else. It's a treatment. Look at some of the other stuff that have no cures: Alzheimer's, type 1 diabetes, Parkinson's, hypertension, etc. Example, even vitiligo. None of these autoimmune diseases have cures, and the best treatments for androgenic alopecia and vitiligo are JAK inhibitors and cost around $2,500 for a month's worth right now. It's downright evil to price them like this, but it pisses me off. And these are just other things that people are talking about. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of treatments that are available today when it comes to stopping hair loss. And a lot of it's, simply like adding something into your routine. And that's the main thing today is like in 2026, going into 2027, if you go completely bald, it's more likely or not that you just didn't do anything about it, because there are treatments today that allow you to keep the hair that you currently have. Growing new hair, a lot like losing a bunch of weight or gaining a bunch of muscle, is going to take a much more dedicated, regimented routine and effort put into it, and might be more than just a one-step process. It's going to take some consistency, but keeping the hair that you currently have is going to be the biggest and easiest advantage that you have in 2026. And if you go completely bald, more or less due to laziness and just not wanting to deal with it. But yeah, we don't have necessarily a cure. There are a lot of underlying treatments that have been coming out that I think are going to be really beneficial for the area, but we still don't have necessarily a cure. That's because if we were to invent a cure, it would likely involve getting rid of or completely eliminating androgen sensitivity in your hair, which is not something that we have yet. Now, hair transplants with transplanted hair that isn't really that androgen sensitive is something that we could be doing. I know hair cloning is coming out. On top of that, there are lots of new hair growth treatments, even topical anti-androgens that are coming out to the market, which do look promising. But once again, all of these are treatments. And there are some things that are talking about, we do have like a straightforward answer that people say, and just take finasteride to stop it. But it's something stranger than the friction to risk potential side effects and potential partners that won't be able to get it up if finasteride and dutasteride messes with their sexual health. You take finasteride or dutasteride to keep your hair. If they give you ED, then you take Viagra and Cialis to give you boners. If Viagra and Cialis give you back pain, then take Advil on a full stomach. Problem solved. It's a lot of these companies now sell all the underlying issues that are going to come from just having hair loss. But I've been seeing a lot of treatments and cures that are potentially going to be coming out for hair loss. And they're talking about things in the next 5 years like PP405, these new calcium drugs that are looking really, really interesting, which is actually just Breezula, which is CB0301, which is a topical anti-androgen that's a lot weaker than pyrolutamide and RU58841. They're not that strong, at least when it comes to the binding affinity to the androgen receptors in your hair follicles. It looks like they can be promising, but once again, FDA approval for these drugs costs billions of dollars, which is crazy, billions. And it usually takes 5 to 7+ years to get through FDA approval. And a lot of these drugs, that's why they always say 5 years away, is because it takes 5 years plus to do FDA approval. And this guy talking about back in 1992, over 30 years ago, they were saying hair loss drugs are 5 years away. Maybe they are. I think the most promising thing that we could probably come up with, which is something that could be on the horizon in the next decade, is going to be hair follicle cloning, to where if you are someone who's actually suffered from balding and you don't have as much hair to actually get a hair transplant, they can genetically clone your hair follicles and then implant them back into your scalp. That one's probably going to be the best treatment for when it comes to regrowing hair and actually getting your scalp back to that like Norwood Zero 15-year-old hairline that you might have had when you were younger, because even transplanted hair can fall out again from being androgen sensitive, and you usually have to stay on some sort of topical anti-androgen or 5-alpha reductase inhibitor if you are sensitive to androgens, because the rest of your hair will eventually begin to fall out, not just the transplanted hairs. So you need to usually get on those drugs post-treatment. And we just don't have like a solid answer to say like this is a cure now and this will be forever. But I think that that's probably going to be the biggest and best thing, is going to be that genetically cloning of the hair follicles, to where you can just implant them and have hundreds of thousands of new hair follicles. Obviously, this treatment is probably not going to be very cheap, and implanting thousands of hair follicles does cost quite a bit of money. So I can imagine if you're doing 10,000 plus, it's going to cost quite a bit. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. Let me know what you think is going to be on the horizon for new hair cures. I did make a video about 6 to 8 months ago talking about new treatments that are coming up on the market. I haven't seen any new developments. A lot of these are obviously in their clinical trials, phase 2 and 3, etc. Yeah, I find it interesting. I'm going to do more of these. I found a couple other things that I think are really interesting on Reddit and how they can implement and talk about hair loss. And like and subscribe. Drop a like, it helps the channel. Share it. Appreciate it.